Shut up and sit down.
This is a Mortgage Accelerated podcast, where mortgage professionals who are crushing it tell their stories and share tips to succeed. Now your host, Tyler Carlston.
What's going on, everybody? This is Tyler Carlston with the Mortgage Accelerated podcast, and today we have our first marketer on the show, Mr. Bobby Stocks. How you doing, Bobby?
Hey, what's going on?
Doing good, man. Doing good. So, how's everything been for you lately?
Busy as usual. So far this year, I have spent just about 90 days on the road and living in hotel rooms. So,
Jeez, it's brutal.
Yeah.
You planning to do any more traveling this year? You have any other big events coming up?
I'm trying to stay put for the next 90 days before we do some events.
Spending some time on planned.
Say again?
What's the next event you guys have planned? Because you were just out in Vegas last week, right?
Yep. So the next event I'll actually be going to would be Nick Carpenter's event, but Nick is moving into the same community that I live in Puerto Rico, and he's having his event in this community. So that event, all I'll have to do is get inside my golf cart and drive like 2 minutes down to hang out with him and his regional loan officer guys. But yeah, we might have some events in. There might be an event for insurance agents that I'm going to in August, September, and then we might have an ad agency, a big event in Chicago sometime in the fall. So
cool, man.
So far, that's it.
Awesome. Let's dive into it then. So, why don't you tell me a little more about yourself, your backstory, where'd you come from?
So, originally born and raised in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Drexel Hill to be specific, and until I got into online and stuff like that, I worked in the restaurant business. So I started cooking and working in restaurants when I was 14, and went to culinary school, like right out of high school, went to culinary school, and worked in that industry until 2012. So from 14 to the ripe age of 30, or 29, I worked in restaurants. And then from there, I decided that I didn't want to continue making 50, 60K a year and having to work insane hours in the restaurant business for the rest of my life. And, had the itch to try to make it on my own and go out and do business. From there, I started selling insurance, trying to do a lot of different things. I was trying to be a financial advisor. I was selling insurance. I ended up starting a fencing company. And that's where I started to really learn about marketing. Started running Facebook ads circa 2012, 2013. Got really good at that and started to see that I needed to have, if I focused my business solely around marketing, that I'd be happier and, so I had built up a contracting company that we focused on fencing. I shut that down in the end of 2015, went all in with marketing. And that's when I started generating mortgage leads. So early 2016, I started generating VA leads. And back then it was like...
Yeah, the heyday.
Oh my God. I mean, I'd generate long form VA leads for $1 a piece all day long. Like, it was just so untapped back then.
Definitely a lot better 2-3 years ago than it is now, for sure.
Yeah, it was ridiculous back then compared to, how difficult it can be now.
Yeah. So what really made you, so I understand for your fencing company, you were doing the marketing, that's where you learned that, but what really made you get the idea to go do marketing for mortgage in the mortgage industry? Did you have like a mentor, or did you take a course from somebody online, or what made you get into that?
Yeah, so I had dibbled and dabbled in the real estate niche because in 2014, I went to really the first like expensive course that I bought in marketing was from Ryan Stewman. And I went to his very first Break Free Academy. And that's like where, I first was introduced to the real estate market. Because when I went there, he was really only coaching real estate. He was really only coaching real estate agents and insurance agents at that time. So I came walking in as, a contractor. And at that point, there wasn't a ton of trainings around Facebook at that point. There was a few people, most of which were focused on like online courses and stuff like that, like selling online courses. So that's when I was first introduced to real estate in general. And there really wasn't a ton of guys to learn from in any other niche besides that. So when I decided to go all in with marketing, that was just an industry I knew. And I dibbled, I work in a lot of different niches. Mostly everybody knows me for mortgage, but the reality is that the majority of what I'm doing is actually not in mortgage. I just, I don't confuse people. But back then it was like, I knew that niche. There's always a demand for it. And I could just generate so many leads in mortgage that it got to the point where it was kind of, I'd just be stupid not to spend, focus more of my time on that niche.
Yeah, for sure. So when you got into the mortgage industry, did you have like a tough period where it wasn't so easy for you to really grow your agency? Did you hit like a struggle period to really grow that business?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is if anybody's actually, anybody who started the business, there's different periods of what a really smart business guy told me, called it the desert period, right? When you start a business, there's the desert period, meaning there's nothing there. It's hot, you're all alone, you have no idea where you're going. You believe that there's something at the end of this journey that is, comfortable and nice, and you're just kind of trekking through it. So, the beginning of my agency, even the beginning of just learning how to market, is like that. There's a lot of wrong turns you can make. There's a lot of different directions you can go in. And from what I've seen, it's, persistency, and just willing to make mistakes and learn from them is kind of the way that you get through that. So with my marketing agency, it was the same thing. I was trying to do everything. And this is also would relate to I don't care if you're a mortgage broker or what business you're in, if you're watching this, I was trying to do everything inside my agency. I was trying to do the sales. I was trying to run the lead gen. I was trying to talk with the clients. I was trying to do it all. I was trying to do the finances for me, which looked like ignoring them completely. So I was trying to do all this stuff, and it's just, I've rarely met anybody who, one, can do all of it, and then there is those few people that kind of can juggle all those balls to some extent, and they're miserable, right? So it's just a matter of time before it all comes crashing down.
Yeah, the light bulb went off, like, just build a team, handle this all, then you can focus on scaling your business. Because a lot of times when I'm speaking with potential clients, it's like, you need to be focusing more your time on building your business instead of working in your business. Because the more time you spend working in it, the less likely it's going to be growing because you're missing all these opportunities left and right.
Right. So for me, it was, once I had that light bulb moment, I realized that I was really good at strategy and, figuring out like lead generation funnels. I started focusing on those two things, moved sales into somebody else to handle that, moved systems into somebody else, moved client retention into somebody else. Once that happened, my business took off. It was like night and day. And I've seen that happen for so many other people since then. It's just figure out what it is that you're really passionate about, that you're not going to feel drained around, like for how hard I work, my wife always says, like, do you love what you do? At times I'm stressed, and it's like I would not do anything else. And it's because I try really hard to constantly redirect myself to get myself back into my zone, inside that structure, which I always refer to as the 5 pillars, right? Marketing, lead generation, sales, delivery, client retention, and finances. It's like everybody's got one or two of those 5 things that they're good at. And the more they focus in those, the more productive they're going to be, the more growth they're going to have, the more happier they're going to be, the more fulfilled they're going to feel. So, yeah, it's like if you boil down how to work a business, it's like that. And it doesn't matter what you're doing, what niche you're in, what model you have. Every single business has those components. And that's what, around mortgage, it's like as we've grown the mortgage side of our agency, we have 2 core products. We do it for you, or we teach you how to do it. And that's basically for guys that are sales focused or service focused. It's like they have no business trying to learn how to run a lead funnel. It's like it's gonna ruin it. It's gonna make them miserable. They're not gonna get any results. They're gonna feel frustrated. Then you have guys that are really just marketers at heart, and they're trying to close loans, they're trying to do all this other stuff. Really, they just need to focus on being the marketer in their business, have other loan officers under them, have processors, have people that are doing that stuff. And that's the big mindset shift that really makes the difference between those that, the 95% that are kind of just, stumbling along, and the 5% that really scale. And we have a client right now that we're running ads for in California. He's a branch manager. He doesn't do any sales. He originally learned how to run the funnels himself, but now he's taken himself out of that. He's just really focusing on, like, how do we grow the team? How do we make sure that we have the right systems in place? And the first month with him, they've put close to $8 million in the books.
Each.
Yeah. So, yeah. And now their company's stroked us a $30K check for ad spend. Those are the type of accounts that I will work on personally, because I love working on the bigger budget accounts. Right. But here's a guy that knows his percentages down to, he knows exactly how many actual funded loans he needs in a 60-day period in order to spend, with the anticipation of knowing he's going to close up to 10% 8 months out. So they have their numbers so dialed in that he knows spending 30 G's this month, it's going to take him 8 months to see the full ROI. But he has his numbers dialed in where he knows he needs to catch, I think it was 0.56% need to close within 60 days for him to justify the long tail. And so many business owners come in and they're like, I need a return on my investment today. Yeah. And it's, and especially in the mortgage business, it's like, if you don't have the runway to understand the buying cycle and to play into that, the big dogs are going to clean you up all day long because they understand, they got their numbers dialed in. This guy's got his numbers dialed in, right? So he knows exactly what to spend, how to spend it, what numbers and metrics to look at. And when you see that night and day, right, it's like I could send those same leads to somebody else who doesn't understand their numbers, and they'll be like, oh, this sucks, or this isn't going to ever work out, or, this isn't profitable. Yet the same guy down the street, super competitive market, we're talking about Southern California, Northern California, it's like, he was showing us the numbers yesterday when his projection sheet, and they're, from the ad spend last month, they're projected to bring in $150,000 to $200,000 in funded loans.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to knowing the numbers and making sure it makes sense. But so many people are just short-sighted that they don't see the big picture of things and are scared to jump in. I see that all day long. So
this guy's got a call center. He's got multiple loan officers. Like, they do everything to milk those leads. And then once they get people in an application, he's got automations that send them videos to keep them engaged in the buying process, because it's not just getting the application. It's how quickly can I get them to buy after they get the application. And I think a lot of loan officers forget about that part. It's like, if you want to see a quick ROI, you need to actually not just take the app and hope that they hurry up and buy, right? Like, everybody's sitting around hoping that some stuff happens. But the winners are out there saying, what do I need to do to solve the problem? What do I need to do to get them to buy faster? Because some realtors will get that buying process going, right? So they're looking at that. They're doing weekly follow-up calls. So if somebody gets pre-approved, they have their office calling every single week saying, hey, what's going on? We just want to check in. How's your experience with your realtor going? You know, how many houses have you looked at? What's going on with this? They're doing everything they can to hold the hand and push that buyer to the closing table as fast as possible, because the quicker they can speed that up, the more money they can spend on advertising. The faster their investment, or the shorter the investment period is for them. But, you know, there's very few people, the amount of brokers I've worked with over the years, everything from one-man shops to guys, you know, we had one guy that was doing $140 million a year in personal production. He's been top 50 loan officer in the country out of all companies. The systems and the mindset, like, there's a drastic gap, just as big as the gap is the income and the personal production, the gap in the mindset and the way they think and solving problems. And this comes across every single business. The most successful businesses welcome problems. The most unsuccessful businesses complain about them. Like, whenever there's problems, solve the problem. So some people want to jump in and solve the problem. And that was like another guy I sat with, and I was talking about this guy making $100 million a year. Like, this isn't loans. This is like, this guy makes $100 million a year. He said to me, Bobby, there's one thing I've learned over the years is that problems equal money. Give me more problems and I'll make more money, because I solve problems. He's like, money's in the solving of the problems, not the avoidance of them. And so many people are focused on, I got all these problems. How do I go around it? How do I avoid it, right? And you can look at this in lead generation. We'll get people that, you know, they've had like 10 agencies in the last year. And they're like, those leads suck. Those leads suck. Everybody sucks. Well, it's like the common denominator, sir, is you, right? So something about your systems isn't fixing a problem, right? And so it's like, even with the ad agencies, you know, agency owners come to me and they say, they express the same thing. And it's like, well, let's look at how are you solving this problem for yourself? And they usually aren't. They're trying to find some kind of quick fix. So just that mindset shift, you know, alone, it's like, I think that's like one of those big keys to just being successful in life and in business in general.
Yeah, I mean, it makes 100% sense. And you pretty much just answered my next question, which was going to be, what kind of tip would you have for either a mortgage company or a lead gen company? You pretty much answered all the questions.
Yeah, it's how do I you know, and in the business, whether you're mortgage or, you know, lead gen, it's always the same question that you have to try to figure out an answer to, which is, how do I get myself or my client as close to the sale as possible?
Yeah, people don't want leads. People want closed deals. I mean, that's what they want.
You know, and everything that we work on and build is always, how do we get somebody as close to the sale as possible? And the more you figure that formula out, at some point, like as a lead gen company, your job should be, how do I get my client so close to the sale that I start to consider actually just opening up that business myself.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes it's like, for me, I've had so many people who are like, oh, if this stuff was so good, why wouldn't you start a mortgage business? And I've thought about starting a mortgage business. I've had plenty of offers to start a mortgage business, and the compliance and all the other nightmares that happen with it is the only thing that's held me back. So I don't know, maybe someday. We thought about setting one up in Florida, but yeah, I'll just keep working on trying to get people as close as possible to the sale for now.
Yep, makes sense. Well, do you have anything left to say? Any last tips or anything you could think of before we end it here today, Bobby?
Well, I don't know. I think that last piece right there is really like the number one thing. Like, how do you get yourself or how do you get your client as close to the sale as possible? And to do that, it's, when you look at it from that angle, like, okay, there's this formula here, or there's this, there's this X marks the spot, right? I want to get to X amount. I want my clients to close X amount, right? I'm here, right? And what are all the obstacles that happen in between this? Okay, let's look at that. What are all the obstacles that stop somebody, from getting across that river, the bridge? And just slowly taking your time and building the bridge for each one of those obstacles.
Yep, makes sense.
And if you can break down if you look at it like that and break down every single one of those, it could, a good system like this can take a long time to figure out. And that's another thing. It's like just patience to continually work and grind away at the problem to find a fix for the problem.
Yep, 100% agree with you, man. Yeah, so that is all the time we have today. So thank you again, Bobby, for jumping on. Appreciate it and dropping tons of value for everybody that was able to jump in and listen.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yep, talk later, everybody.
All right, bro. Peace.